I come to write books for children? I think that I always wanted to be a book creator. When I was in elementary school, there was a book contest where you write and illustrate your own book and you send it into this contest, and if you win first place, then they would publish your book. So I entered a book into this contest. I didn't win first place, but I did win fourth place, and I was so excited and so happy that I won fourth place that I decided I want to make books forever, and I stuck to that, and so that's really what happened. I went to the Rhode School of Design for children's illustration because, as I said, in elementary school I knew I wanted to be a children's book creator, and so when I graduated from high school I decided I wanted to become a children's book illustrator. I went to the Rhode Island School of Design. I studied illustration, and after I graduated, I sent out hundreds and thousands of postcards and samples of your work. That's what all illustrators do. And I didn't hear anything back, except for one little card from I think he was a junior editor, or he was an assistant editor at Orchard Books, and he said, "I really like your stuff. Please send more." And I thought that was really nice, but still did not pay the bills. So I actually took a job at a giftware company where I made t-shirts that said "World's Best Dad" and like mugs that said, "Did anyone tell you today you're terrific?" And I was really, really miserable and I was really unhappy until a great thing happened and I got laid off. And when I got laid off, I got a severance package, and with this severance package I said, okay, well, I was always miserable in that job anyway. I really need to take this opportunity to really try to make it as a children's book author and illustrator, my dream. And so I did. I went to New York and I hit the pavement and I showed my portfolio to everyone. I sent out even thousands more mailers, and I still got no response. And just when I was running out of money from my severance package, I got a call, and it was the assistant editor that had sent me that postcard so many years ago. And he said, "Oh, I just got your new sample." He said, "I'm no longer the assistant editor at this other company. I'm now the senior editor at Charlesbridge Publishing. And I've always loved your artwork, but I've never been able to find a story that goes with it. And I saw this new sample. Do you have a story that goes with this sample?" And I said, "Yes, I do," even though I didn't. He said, "Great. I'm at Charlesbridge, which is right close to where you live, I see. So why don't we set up an appointment and you come in next week and we'll talk and bring in your story." And I said, "Okay, I will." And so I quickly sat down and stared at my sample and started writing, and I brought the story in, and that became my very first book, actually, The Ugly Vegetables. and that's kind of a long story done shortly because there was many revisions and lots of working with the editor before that actually happened. But that's how I broke in. The best thing that I always say to kids is if you want to be a writer, you have to be a reader. And that's very, very important. The thing that always kind of drives me crazy is when an adult comes to me and says, I want to write a children's book. And I'd be like, "Oh, well, what are your favorite children's books?" And they'd be like, "Oh, I don't read them." And I'd be like, "Well, how can you write a children's book without reading them?" And I think that that's very, very important. I think you need to read books and you need to love books. I think to me, I feel like if the author doesn't love what they wrote, if the author doesn't love their own book, then the reader is never going to either. So I think the best advice, other than to read a lot, is to love what you're writing. And I mean, of course, there's love-hate when you write it, but in the end, to love what you're writing, because you have to love it before anybody else does. I was always interested in writing fantasy, but it was not something that was pressing. I was always interested in the genre, but I only started to write it when my late husband asked me to. He unfortunately died in 2007 from cancer. But before he passed, he was doing many different treatments, and while he was doing chemotherapy, he asked me if we had a routine where I would write stories and read it to him, and he said, "Why don't you write a fantasy this time? Because that way when you write it and read it to me, I can imagine I'm someplace else, not getting chemotherapy. And I said, okay, and so I did. But unfortunately, I probably was writing about a third way of the book. He lost his battle with cancer, and I was very upset, obviously. I was devastated when he passed. And I thought, well, that's the end of the book. I'm not going to write it now, now that he's gone. And I thought that was the end, until one day, a good friend of mine, Janet Wong, also an author and illustrator, she came by and she said, whatever happened to that book you were writing? And I said, oh, I couldn't finish it before Robert passed. It's just not meant to be. And she said to me, no, maybe it's better that you didn't finish it before he died, because now you can change the ending. And if you had written it, if you had finished it before he died, you would feel like you couldn't. But now you can change the ending, and the book can be anything you want. And when she said that, it was a big moment for me. It was a big revelation, and I realized not only could I finish the book and make it any way I wanted, it was also the same thing for my life. It was just because he passed, and I was devastated for that, my life still hadn't ended, and I could still write the rest of my life. And so that's pretty much the soul of this book, and how this book is kind of my homage to him and his life. In this book, Min Lee is on the search for happiness. She's looking for the secret to happiness, and that's when I wrote it. That's what I was. I was looking for the secret of happiness too. I was looking to how after Robert had died, I was so upset. But writing this book made me realize that I had the secret of happiness all the time too, just like Min Lee did. So this book is my new very honor book, Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. A lot of people are calling it a Chinese Wizard of Oz, which I think is really interesting. And really, I think it's a really great way to explain it to people. But I do want people to know that I actually very, very loosely took the idea of this book from a Chinese folktale called Olive Lake. I changed it quite a bit, so you could call The Wizard of Oz an American version of a Chinese tale of Olive Lake. So, but regardless, this book is called Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, and it's about this girl, Min Lee, who goes on this great journey, and she's on her way to find the old man of the moon. And as she goes on this journey, she meets all of these different people and all of these different creatures, and each one of them tells her a different story. And each story that she hears affects her journey. And even though she doesn't know it affects her journey until the very end, it affects it in a very deep and profound way, and hopefully the reader too. So this is one of the stories that she hears. This is the story of the old man of the moon. This is the story her father tells her, and I'll read it now. So this is the story of the old man of the moon. Once there was a magistrate who was quite powerful and proud. He was so proud that he demanded constant respect from his people. Whenever he made a trip out of the city, no matter what time of day or night, people were to leave their homes, get on their knees, and make deep bows as he passed, or else face the brutal punishment of his soldiers. The magistrate was fierce in his anger as well as his pride. It is said he even expected the monkeys to come down from the trees to bow to him. The magistrate was harsh with his subordinates, ruthless to his enemies, and pitiless to his people. All feared his wrath, and when he roared his orders, the people trembled. Behind his back, they called him Magistrate Tiger. Magistrate Tiger's most coveted wish was to be of royal blood. As soon as his son was born, he began to make trips and inquiries to gain influence in hopes that he could marry his son to a member of the imperial family. One night, as the magistrate traveled through the mountains, again on a trip to gain favor for his son's future marriage, he saw an old man sitting alone in the moonlight. The old man ignored the passing horses and the carriages, the silk brocade and the government seal, and simply continued reading a large book in his lap. The old man's indifference infuriated Magistrate Tiger, and he ordered the carriage to stop. However, even the halting noises did not make the old man look up. Finally, Magistrate Tiger exited his carriage and went to the old man who was still engrossed in his book. "Do you not bow to your magistrate?" he roared. The old man continued to read. "What are you reading that is so important?" the magistrate demanded, and looked at the pages of the book. It was full of scribbles and scrawls that were not of any language the magistrate knew of. "Why, it's just nonsense written in there." "Nonsense," the old man said, finally looking up. "You fool. This is the Book of Fortune. It holds all the knowledge of the world, the past, the present, and the future." The magistrate looked again at the marks of the page. "I cannot read it," he said. "Of course not," the man said, "but I, the old man of the moon, guardian of the Book of Fortune, can read it, and with it I can answer any question in the world." "You can answer any question in the world?" the magistrate scoffed. "Very well. Who will my son marry when he is of age?" The old man of the moon flipped the pages of the book. He said to himself. "Yes, here it is. Your son's future wife is now the 2-year-old daughter of a grocer in the next village." "The daughter of a grocer?" the magistrate spat. "Yes," the old man of the moon continued. "Right now she is wrapped in a blue blanket embroidered with white rabbits, sitting on the lap of her blind grandmother in front of her house." "No," the magistrate said, "I won't allow it." "It's true," the old man said. "They are destined to be husband and wife. I myself tied the red cord that binds them." "What red cord?" Magistrate Tiger demanded. "Do you know nothing? I tie together everyone who meets with these red threads," the old man sighed, holding up his bag full of red string. "When you were born, I tied your ankle to your wife's ankle with a red thread, and as you both grew older, the line became shorter and shorter until you eventually met. All the people you've met in your life have been brought to you by the red cords I tied." "I must have forgotten to tie the end of one of those lines, which is why you are meeting me now. I won't do that again." "I don't believe you," the magistrate said. "Believe or don't believe," the old man said, standing up and putting the big book on his back. "We've reached the end of our thread, and I will now leave." The magistrate stared in dumbfounded silence as the old man on the moon walked away up the mountain. "Crazy old man," the magistrate said finally. "What a waste of my time." The magistrate returned to his carriage and continued on. But as they drove through the next village, he saw an old blind woman holding a baby girl in front of a house. The girl was wrapped in a blue blanket embroidered with white rabbits, just as the old man of the moon had said. Magistrate Tiger burned with anger. "I will not let my son marry a grocer's daughter," he vowed. So after he arrived at his guest house, the magistrate secretly ordered one of his servants to return to the grocer's home and stab the girl with a knife. "That will take care of her," he thought to himself. Many years later, Magistrate Tiger had his dream fulfilled. He was finally able to obtain a match for his son with one of the emperor's many granddaughters, and his son would inherit the rule of a remote city. On the wedding day, Magistrate Tiger bragged to his son about how he had arranged the marriage and outwitted the old man of the moon. The son, who was not like his father, said nothing, but after the wedding ceremony sent a trusted servant to find the grocer's family to make amends. In the meantime, he became acquainted with his bride and was happy to find that both were pleased with each other. He found his new wife beautiful, the only oddity about her being that she always wore a delicate flower on her forehead. "Dear wife," he said, "why do you always wear that flower? Even to sleep, you never remove it." "It is to hide my scar," she said, touching her forehead in embarrassment. "When I was a child, no older than 2, a strange man stabbed me with a knife. I survived, but I still have this scar." And at that moment, the trusted servant came rushing in. "Master," he said, "I made the inquiries you asked for. In a flood many years ago, the grocer's family perished, except for the daughter. The king of the city, the emperor's 9th son, then adopted the daughter and raised her as his own. And that daughter is your wife." And that's the end of that part of the story.
The Meet the Author series is a production of WETA. Major funding for Colorine, Colorado is provided by the American Federation of Teachers, with additional support from the United States Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs. For more information about teaching ELLs, please visit us at www.coloриnecolorado.org.